Good afternoon, everybody. Want to welcome you to the March 1st Lunchtime Hot Topics. We have a pretty good agenda today, so I'm just going to jump right into it. We've got a update on Title IV with Tate. There's a lot going on nationally with the ESSA, Elementary, Secondary, and Education Act. And Tate will give you a little bit of an update on what we know about Title IV. Other than that, you may have heard that the president suspended the regulations that were put out by the U.S. Department of Ed under ESSA. That does not, though, negate the new law. So we are still working based on what we know is in the new ESSA law. Federal regulations are basically just how the U.S. Department of Ed will oversee the new law. Since that has been suspended, we don't know what work they're going to be doing on it, but we do still have to follow the new law. So it's not slowing us down at all. We still plan on submitting our state plan most likely in August, but we'll keep you updated on where we're at, and Tate's going to give you a little bit of information about the Title IV, what we know about it. Kent Reed's going to give an update on where we are with the social-emotional character development, all the work. As you remember, this is one of the board's outcomes that we will be focused on SECD, but all that will be measured locally, and Kent will give you an update on some of the work we're doing in that area. Jay Scott's going to give you an update on where we're at with individual plans of study. A lot of work going on. I want to thank everybody for their focus on that. It's been exciting. I got to, on a personal level, I've got a son that's a high school freshman, and it was great last week to meet with his advisor, and we did his first individual plan of study, and it was just really exciting. So thanks to everybody out there for what you're doing with parents and students around individual plans of study. And then Scott Myers is going to wrap it up with the work that we're doing right now under the KISA model with an outside validation team. And actually, I think we are changing the language on this. It's really an outside visitation team. We have over 700 educators that have signed up to be a part of an OVT team, which I think is awesome. And honestly, under the KISA model, I think this is probably the most important piece of it and be the most meaningful part of it. And that's just good educators getting out to other districts and learning what they're doing around the board's outcomes, what they're doing around initiatives to try and move the needle for our students. So with that, I just want to remind everybody that if you have questions throughout this or requests for future topics, just email it to lunchtime@ksde.org. I also finally just want to remind everybody that this summer we are hosting 3 Impact Institutes. One of them will be at Washburn University here in Topeka, June 20th and 21st. We'll have one at Pitt State in July 11th to 12th, and one at Barton Community College, July 18th and 19th. These Impact Institutes are where we just take a much deeper dive into the board outcomes, the initiatives, all the work that's going on. They are low cost and a great time to get some of your teachers engaged in learning about the direction that the state board and this agency is headed. Thank you.
Okay, today we're going to talk about Title IV Part A of the Every Student Succeeds Act. because we've been receiving a lot of questions because there hasn't been a lot of information coming out of the Kansas State Department of Education over Title IV. And part of that is we're also waiting for more information, especially when it comes to appropriations. So as we talk about this is Title IV Part A, Student Support and Academic Enrichment. And this is a brand new formula-based grant. We still have the Title IV Part B, 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which is a competitive grant and goes through Chris Macy in the Early Childhood Special Education Title Programs team. But we're going to focus on Part A, which is brand new in the Every Student Succeeds Act and replaces a lot of previously competitive grants that went from the United States Department of Ed to local school districts and sometimes through the state education agencies on to local school districts. Those have been combined, much like how the state finance for education is right now, into a block grant, which with a lot of different opportunities. However, with that said, two of the biggest questions have to do with our appropriations. When will we get these funds and how much will these funds be? And both those are still fairly unanswered questions. 2 weeks ago on a USD webinar, there was a quote when asked about funding for Title IV Part A. If there is a fiscal year 17 appropriation, awards to SEAs will be made by September 30th, 2017. That brings up a couple issues. The first word is that if. So that's actually saying they're not even confident Congress will appropriate funds for this program at this time. The second piece is the awards will go out to states in September. So we're looking at two things here. Number one, it may not be funded for the 17-18 school year. And number two, if it is funded, the funding won't even get out to the states until about the end of the second month of school. So that means best case scenario, school districts would have access to draw down these funds in October. And that's if everything went about as perfect as it could be, going from the United States Department of Ed to KSDE and on to the local school districts. We're not going to deal with those issues right now in this webinar, but we're still going to try to keep you as updated as possible as we know more information. The most recent appropriations that have been discussed in the U.S. House and Senate have the overall national appropriations somewhere between 300 million and 800 million if it is appropriated. And even though those numbers sound fairly large, when you divide that out across 50 plus states, when you figure in your District of Columbia and outer lying regions, plus then on down to school districts, this does not leave a whole lot of funding for our local school districts. So now we're going to go into some of the resources on Title IV and where you can find them before we start talking about the specifics of how these funds will be used once they are and if they are appropriated. This is the link to the United States Department of Education website. Some of the things you'll find on this page are general resources, final regulations that are out and have been enacted. You'll find some information about the final regulations that have also been delayed, any proposed regulations, the guidance and regulatory information, which there is guidance information on Title IV available, any public notices, and information on the negotiated rulemaking. And for Title I Part A, there are 3 different parts to this that districts may, if they receive funds, spend their allocations on. And they're listed as sections 4107, 4108, and 4109. And we'll go into each of these individually here shortly. 4107 is the activities to support well-rounded education. 4108, activities to support safe and healthy students. And the third one, section 4109, activities to support the effective use of technology. One of the big questions we're getting is, will this money go directly to districts? Will it go to a consortium? And it really depends on the size of the districts and the amount of the congressional appropriation made for the Title IV program. Some of the things we do know we're sharing on this slide. The key is to receive a grant, districts would have to generate a minimum $10,000. For those that generate less than $10,000, this will be handled somewhat like Title III. Every district will qualify for a certain amount of these funds. If it's less than $10,000, a district will have two options. One is to join a consortium of districts similar to Title III, and the other is to transfer the Title IVA funding into another title fund, such as Title IIA for professional development, mentoring, and class size reduction, or into Title I, Part A for programs for our most disadvantaged students and our students in poverty. Those will be left up to the districts. Those will be things that districts will have to decide before they do their applications for funds. Again, we mentioned we might not know some of this information till later in the year compared to our other title programs, so it might create some unique possibilities for how we have to do our applications this year. We're looking at multiple options, and we'll let you know what the final decisions are as soon as they have been made. Another thing that needs to be known is if a district receives the $10,000 but is less than $30,000, they can have their own grant, and they will not have to do a full-blown Title IV needs assessment or fund in activities under all three of the sections we mentioned before. However, the $30,000 must still address at least one of the three, if not the three. And when we talk about a full-blown needs assessment, we're talking about your needs assessment that you may be using as part of the Kansas Learning Network, part of your KISA accreditation. This should not be a separate needs assessment. This should be part of your main needs assessment on how best these funds, if the district receives them, should be used to get the best benefit for the students and teachers in the district. However, any district that generates $30,000 or more will have to base it on the needs assessment and will have funding requirements in all three categories that we have mentioned. And we'll go into more specific details of those percentages and have a base example as we go forward. As we've been talking, there are three sections. The first section, which is called Well-Rounded Education, is section 4107. And basically, this is in essence to provide a well-rounded education for all students. If a district receives $30,000 or more in their formula grant for Title IV Part A, they must spend a minimum of 20% of those funds in this area. And these funds may be used to develop, implement, and evaluate comprehensive programs and activities that can provide various activities listed on this page, such as counseling students for post-secondary opportunities, financial literacy, music and arts, financial aid awareness. They can be used in our STEM areas. They can also help the underrepresented or minority members in the high-quality courses and STEM activities. They can help reimburse our low-income students for accelerated learning examination fees. They can strengthen our civic programs, our volunteer programs, our community engagement programs. They can also go for any type of professional development activities for our teachers to learn more about doing the above activities. So that gives you just a very basic general knowledge of what well-rounded education is considered under section 4107 of Title IV. Now the second section is section 4108, Improving School Conditions. And we'll go through 4 different slides over some of the activities that can occur under this section. And a reminder, districts that receive $10,000 but less than $30,000 may spend their funding in any of these 3 sections. But again, you'll see by the second line here, a district with $30,000 or more will have to spend a minimum of 20% in this area. So both sections 4107 and 4108 have minimum amounts. These funds should be used to develop, implement, and evaluate comprehensive programs and activities that fall under community-based programs. They foster safe, healthy, supportive, and drug-free environments that help support the student academic achievement, promote parents' involvement and activities in these programs, and they can also be conducted in partnership with other organizations such as community-based organizations, nonprofits, higher ed, and our business community. These activities may include, but are also not limited to, drug and violence activities, which for some people that have been working in Title programs for years is similar to the previous Title IV Part A program that has not been funded over the past 5 years. And they also can go to help educate students against the use of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, smokeless tobacco products, and electronic cigarettes. Another area where funds may be used under 4108 is providing mental health services, and that can be in combination with our public and private mental health entities or healthcare facilities. Some of the things that would be included under this would be helping prevent bullying and harassment, providing mentoring and counseling to our at-risk students, providing trauma-informed care practices, and establishing or improving our school dropouts and reentry programs. And then the last slide that covers section 4108 is over the professional development. And professional development activities under this section can go for suicide prevention, our trauma-informed practices, crisis management and conflict resolution, human trafficking, school-based violence prevention, drug abuse, and bullying and harassment prevention. And then our last section, section 4109, we'll talk about, has a couple slides on this. And it is a focus of technology and to improve the academic achievement and digital literacy of all students. The 3 bullets down here talk about what we're talking about here: experience supported by technology and the professional development for that effective use of the data and technology. As you see, there is not a minimum percentage here, so you could spend up to 60% of your funds here because you've already had to set aside a minimum of 20 in the other 2 categories if you receive more than $30,000. But of that 60%, a maximum of 15% could be used for infrastructure. So an example would be if a district had a grant of $100,000, the minimum $20,000 in the first 2 sections, or minimum 20% would be $20,000. So that would leave up to $60,000 that could be used in technology. A district could use that in the other 2 areas. Part of that, they'd have to use some money under this section. And if they use the full $60,000 under technology, 15% of that $60,000 could be spent on infrastructure. So that would be $9,000. So if you look at it at a $100,000 grant, the maximum amount that could be used for infrastructure would be $9,000 in this case. Some of the activities under the use of technology include providing our educators, our administrators, and other leaders professional learning tools, devices, and content that will help personalize, adapt, and use the technology to address needs of all students. It can help build technological capacity and infrastructure. Again, the infrastructure, we have that 15% limit of the amount of funds in 4109. Can help us develop or use effective or innovative strategies to deliver our specialized academic courses. Carrying out blended learning projects can be used for professional development activities and technology that help our teachers and leaders increase student achievement in the areas of STEM, and also providing students in rural areas and underserved areas the advantage of high-quality digital learning experience and to access online courses that are taught by effective teachers when we have districts that cannot provide enough students to have a teacher in a course or cannot find a quality educator to teach the course in the rural areas. And then the last slide here just talks about our learning services updates. You know, we have our hot topics the first and third Wednesday. We have a link for that. During that, we have learning service initiative updates. We have our regular KISA updates for accreditation, our ESSA updates for our title programs, and then we talk about our 5 board outcomes. That first link is for our hot topics. A couple other sources of information are our Title I Directors and Coordinators webinars, our monthly IDEA Directors and Coordinators webinars, and then our monthly TASN newsletter. For just general ed, ESSA resources from the Department of Ed, it's ed.gov/ESSA. We have our KSDE ESSA link there. An easier way to get to that is, if you haven't put it in your favorites, is just to go to ksde.org, and in the subject index at the top of the page, click on the E, and you'll find it under the word every toward the bottom of the sections of E's. Couple contact information. My name is Tateman, Tateman@ksde.org. Dean Zeitz is also working with the Title IV program currently with me. So his email address is dzeitz@ksd.org, or general ESSA questions may be sent to essaquestions@ksd.org. And just a reminder that today's students are our future workforce and future leaders of Kansas. Kansans can achieve anything, and together Kansans can lead the world in the success of each student. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, this is Kent Reed, and I'm the school counseling consultant and the point person for social emotional character development. Thank you for joining us today for some updates for social emotional character development. The first thing I'd like to share with you is a pilot and train of the trainers that we've contracted with research collaboration to provide that information for the college and career competency framework. And most of you probably are familiar with the competency wheel, the college and career competency wheel. Essentially, what this training and the pilot will do will help students learn how to develop intra and interpersonal and cognitive skills. They'll do it via a multi-tiered instruction and intervention basis, data-based decision-making, and effective collaboration. And the reason, of course, is that we want our learners to be socially engaged, career-equipped, and lifelong learners. When we say intrapersonal competencies, what we're talking about occurs within the individual's mind or self, such as goal setting, self-regulation, and self-efficacy. Interpersonal competencies help us interact with others successfully, such as empathy, teamwork, conflict management, and conscientiousness. Other updates that I'd like to tell you about, and I sent these out over the listserv today. First of all, we have developed a crosswalk with the SSAE standards and the new accreditation model. And many of you are planning on writing your accreditation plan over the next few months. We would like you to consider using board outcome number 5, measuring SSAE locally. This is what the rubric looks like. And if you'll notice, in this column are the 5 R's of the accreditation model: results, relationships, rigor, etc. Across the top are the 3 standards of the social emotional character development standards. Okay, these really are just examples. For example, under relationships, strategies that develop analysis of thought and emotions, you don't have to use those specific qualities of character. What you might want to do is develop your own, for example, mindfulness or reflective listening. But the idea is that the rubric itself will help you complete that accreditation plan. The other thing we're excited about is a measuring social emotional character growth toolkit. Okay, there are 3 sections in the toolkit. The first is a series of overview documents such as the SSAE fact sheet and a Data 101 document that will help you understand better the difference between outcome data and perception data, etc. Then the second section is the types of collectible data, and what we did is we borrowed from schools who are already doing this, and they gave us permission to use them as examples. Again, that might be examples of perception data, how folks use the Communities That Care survey, and Candice incident data. Really, you're probably already collecting social emotional character development data. It's just a matter of knowing what to do once you collect it and how to use it, okay? And then the third section would be curricular examples. We have surveyed the field in Kansas, and the 3 top vendors relative to social emotional character development curriculums are Safe and Civil Schools, College and Career Competencies, which you just saw a few slides ago, and the Committee for Children, Second Steps, Steps to Respect. They all provided us with submissions that we put in the toolkit so you can see what it looks like and how they measure SECD. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or send me an email. Kent Reed, reed@ksde.org. It's 785-296-8109. And thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, welcome to our individual plans of study update. My name is Jay Scott. I'm an assistant director here at the Kansas State Department of Ed. I have with me Kent Reed, our counseling consultant at KSDE, and Kathleen Mercer, who's our career pathways coordinator, a joint employee with KSDE and the Kansas Board of Regents. And we're going to take you through an update on individual plans of study. The last time that we recorded one of these was back in November, so we felt like this was an appropriate time to bring to you some fresh material on individual plans of study as we move out across the state. So today we're going to break it down into IPS process, then the tool. We're going to talk a little bit about implementation and a survey that's going to come out this week, and then we're going to finish with a new resource called the IPS Quality Rubric that we're going to be releasing later this spring. So with that, I will turn it over to Kent to talk about the process.
Thanks, Jay, and it's a pleasure to be here with both Jay and Kathleen. This is an exciting time because what we're doing is we're moving from a focus on developing a product and a template toward an advising model. And that directly relates to things like relationships in the accreditation model, and we'll talk about that in a moment. One thing we need to keep in mind is that relative to advising and the IPS, we're all in this together. So a team approach is the best way to proceed. Fully implemented schools report the value and strength of involving all staff in IPS development. Now, how can schools most effectively address each type of activity using a model such as IPS? Well, there are 3. One way is a one-on-one relationship, a counselor or career advocate, and during that process, goals can be set, created, updated, particularly as it relates to the post-secondary plan, and courses could be selected. Another method would be the small group or advisory seminar method, where again you identify career interests, abilities, and preferences, explore, research post-secondary options, and develop a portfolio. And a third method, direct instruction from a CTE or a core teacher. And that would involve things like career exploration, research post-secondary options, and developing that portfolio. The IPS process for the student is really circular and in fact is something that you can utilize all the way through the end of your own personal careers. Okay, the one thing that we want to do in the beginning is identify career interests, abilities, and preferences, and then set goals and update a post-secondary plan. We can explore, research post-secondary options, select courses, and then move into a career exploration. Now, that can be defined as things such as job shadowing, internship, career fairs, mock interviews, workplace tours, etc. And then develop a portfolio, which would include resume, cover letter, employability skills, documentation, assessment results, extracurricular activities, etc. Now, I mentioned that this all relates to the accreditation model, KISA, and one way it does is the 5 R's, relationships, for example. Obviously, you can see how advising and relationships are aligned. Relevance, this is a state board outcome, but it also makes careers, or school I should say, relevant for students. Kathleen?
Thanks, Kent. So I was going to just talk a little bit about the individual plan of study tool. Please remember that schools are not required to purchase an individual plan of study tool. You can use resources that you have access to, or you could purchase Career Cruising, which is our state preferred vendor. There are a number of other vendors out there. You're welcome to use whatever works best for your community, your school. The Kansas State Department of Education does reimburse for the startup costs if you are starting with Career Cruising, as long as you are a Perkins eligible school. And we will be following that same process for 2017 that we followed in 2016 for reimbursement. Just feel free to contact me if you have any questions and if you're interested in getting Career Cruising in your school. But again, I want to reiterate that you are not required to purchase an individual plan of study tool. It's just something that might be useful for you to use in order to coordinate all of these efforts. And Career Cruising actually has a lot of resources for the staff, including curriculum, for the counselors regarding scheduling, for administration, all types of tools in that one product. I think Jay is going to talk a little bit about the individual plan of study quality rubric next. Or maybe.
Yeah, and before we get to that, just on IPS implementation, it's one of our short-term goals right now with individual plans of study. We know that schools out there, they are fully implemented with a tool and a process, and I appreciate what Kent and Kathleen both talked about with process and tool. Those are really good information points for schools to have. But we have some schools that are fully implemented. We also have some schools that may not have a tool or a process yet. So that's where the IPS implementation survey comes into play. We sent out a survey last September in 2016. We have results from that survey. In fact, on this slide, this is a link to the results of the first implementation survey. We've since improved that survey. We've formed up an individual plan of study advisory committee made up of secondary school counselors, secondary principals, transition coordinators, central office staff, service center staff, to take a look at the resources that we've got going out across the state to make sure they're on point. And so we've revised the first IPS implementation survey, and we'll be sending the second iteration of that survey out this week. We're hoping that every school district will respond. It helps us identify as a state where we're strong with implementation, where there are some points that need improved, and so it helps us target our assistance and support to schools to make sure that we meet our goal. And that goal is that every middle school and high school in the state of Kansas will have implemented a tool and a process by the end of the next school year, 17-18. That doesn't mean that every student needs to have an individual plan of study by 17-18. That just means that the school has a tool and a process to follow by the end of next school year. So as Kathleen alluded to, we've also got a new resource that we think is going to be very helpful to schools. We're calling it the IPS Quality Rubric. It's meant to do two things. It's meant to help districts self-assess both implementation, where you are with implementing a tool and a process, and then also the quality of the IPS program as a whole. And so this is just a sample that you can see on the screen. We have performance criteria, and I'm not sure the total count, but I think there's at least 15 or 16 performance criteria on the actual rubric. And then across the top, we've got the categories, no evidence, implementing, transitioning, and modeling, with modeling being the I guess the top level to reach with your IPS program. And many of you will notice that these three, implementing and transitioning and modeling, mimic and are exactly the same categories in KISA, in our state's accreditation system model that's coming out. So this rubric, we think, will really have some value to district leadership groups, to building leadership groups, to sit down and look through and self-assess where the school district is with all things IPS. It'll be available in May. We're hoping by mid-May to roll that out to all districts so that they can start using that rubric to help them improve and implement with further fidelity their individual plan of study program. This rubric was not created in a vacuum. It was not Kathleen, Kent, and I didn't just sit down and hammer this out. But with the help of Joni Clark-Liker and with our individual plan of study external committee, again made up of secondary counselors and principals and central office folk, they sat down and really guided us through this rubric, and we feel like it's really going to provide a lot of support to schools in knowing where they are with individual plans of study. So just short-term goals, mainly for next school year and the 18-19 school year. I've already talked about this, but every middle school and high school fully implemented a tool and a process by the end of next year. And then the next short-term goal is that every student, and this begins in the middle grades, at least at the 8th grade level, will have an actual individual plan of study beginning with the 18-19 school year. Now, obviously, depending on the grade level that a student is in, will depend on what goes into their individual plan of study. We're not asking schools to go back for your senior class during the 18-19 school year and have them complete career interest inventories or do those kinds of things. During 18-19, it'll just be important that every student in every school looks at what's the most appropriate part of the individual plan of study to have that grade level work on and start with. So we're here to help. Those are our short-term goals. We know we're going to reach them. We're busy across the state providing assistance through professional development events. We do a lot of talking on the phone, a lot of emails, so feel free to call us, email us. If you've got an event where you're bringing parents in, we've gone out and done those, business and industry, because it's going to take everybody. It's going to take everybody together around to create a system where an individual plan of study and the student's career interests are in the driver's seat for their educational plan. So please feel free to contact us. Here are some further web resources that we have available, and we look forward to supporting you further with individual plans of study across the state. Thanks for your time.
Hello, Kansas. This is Scott Myers with you once again to talk with you about the next piece of the accreditation work we're doing across the state. Today, I know I've talked to you one other time about the OVT, or the outside visitation team, but we are honing in on the training phase, professional learning phase around the OVTs themselves. So it's important to come back and talk to you one more time about this. If you'll recall, all this accreditation work, it all comes back to the vision of the state board and our outcomes, on which we're focusing. And of course, the thinking is by engaging in the KISA process, we will have a much better orientation toward realizing the vision and the outcome of our State Board of Education. And of course, this plays into the definition of a successful high school graduate. And once again, it's just the same messages along the vision and the outcomes. This process will definitely help us realize all those potentials. The outside validation team, as it says on the screen here, is, it's a bedrock. I like that word. It's a bedrock of our model. And the idea, of course, is to involve a variety of people in this process to help the local districts and the systems with recognizing and seeing the areas of growth, and to help with the bouncing off good ideas. And so I know I've said this before, but as a superintendent myself back in the day, I would flat out really want my people to be involved in this because they would go off to the other systems serving as an OVT member, and they'd bring home some of those great ideas for us to utilize in our own school district. So there's all sorts of reasons to be involved in this. So we're really hoping that we give just an army of people who are interested in taking part. People who should be doing this, because it's not uncommon for me to get questions from people saying they just really doubt whether or not they have the expertise or the experience to be able to serve as an OVT member. And my answer to that is, if you have these bullets on this screen here, you are prepared. You may not have ever served in this capacity, but that's okay. There is going to be a professional learning series put together, and that's what this particular hot topic broadcast is about, that will bring you up to speed, and so that you'll be able to get out there and serve in this capacity. Really, the most important part of this, in my opinion, is your willingness to serve, and that you have the heart of an educator. You're looking for what's best, and you're willing to put forth the effort to get involved with the movement itself. We do encourage people to get involved as we've gone out and talked, particularly through the third quarter of this particular school year. I've challenged everybody in the room, said everybody in the room should get involved as an OVT member, but then also my challenge was to go home and find 5, 6, 7 more people who could be involved. You start doing the math on this, we need well over 2,000 people from the state of Kansas who would be willing to participate. And while that might sound daunting, when you realize that we have 44,000 practicing teachers in the field, several thousand administrators, working in the field, and then a variety of other professionals working, we have plenty of people. We just have to get people to know that they can serve in this role and would be more than just contributing. They'd be vital to what we're doing. We have developed the protocols, and we're turning it over to our friends in the service centers, who will now be conducting regionally based learning opportunities for people to come and learn how to function and how to serve on the OVTs. What you see here now is a resource that we'll be utilizing when people say, yeah, okay, great, I've got passion for this, I'm interested, but really still I'm just not so sure that I could be involved in this. The resource that you see on the screen right now is meant to guide people through the actual steps and the actions of the OVT. So it allows the individual members to take notes, and it provides direction to walk through. So I don't care what year of the cycle on which you happen to be working, you open this resource up and it'll have year 3 in the cycle. It'll have year 4. It'll have the different years listed with pertinent information for each one of those years themselves. This will be provided in hard copy, but also electronically. Different types of learners, people like to utilize their resources differently. So we're looking to make sure that it fits the needs of the users themselves. And when the trainings, the professional learning opportunities actually take place out regionally at the service centers, they will be walking through this resource. And so once again, you're getting a little view of it right now, and it's continually being updated, and it'll be ready to roll here in early March. These opportunities will be taking place. If a person is interested in becoming involved, which we certainly hope you are, after you sign up, there's a spot on the KSDE website, the sign-up sheet that says, my name, and I'm interested in becoming a part of the OVT, and I live in this part of the state. The people who have registered on that form, and right at this moment, we've got upwards almost 700 people on this, which is great. What a great start, and we thank every one of you. Now go get 2 friends and get them to sign up with you as well. You will receive emails from the various regions where you happen to live to give you dates, times, and locations. Of course, you're more than welcome to travel the state if you want to go to different ones, but we're taking the first approach of it's easier for someone to get to a particular learning opportunity if it's within easy driving distance of their home. We will be sending out information in a variety of different ways, and then the actual leading up to the learning sessions themselves. After the sessions have been conducted, at the end of that, the idea is before you leave on that day, you will sign a sheet of paper that says, yes, I've been through the training, and yes, I feel I'm prepared and I'm willing to serve. And you'll just sign your name on a sheet of paper. Ultimately, we'll have a process. We'll have a variety of different ways where OVT members will then be asked to serve by the local district or the local system. If you'll recall from the previous session, I think I covered this material, saying the KSDE will not be assigning people. Make sure I say that a couple times. I will not be assigning OVT members to the various systems out there. The various systems will go and access this list of trained members, and then they'll make the overtures toward asking somebody to participate. We, of course, will be working out a system so that one person isn't chosen 25 times. And, of course, you as a member have the right to refusal. If it just doesn't make sense for you to have to drive 8 hours to go serve on an OVT. That's not the intention of this. We want people to be able to do it within easy driving of their house. And so an overture will be made from the local system to you to see if you'd like to serve on their OVT. Like I said previously, there is a registration link on our webpage. If you go to Teacher Licensure and Accreditation, or go under Accreditation, or go under KISA, you'll ultimately find this. That gets your name on the short list, or the mailing list, if you will, where we'll start sending out dates and times and whatnot for you to actually get registered for that learning session that will be held regionally. Then, of course, just simply follow through with the learning opportunity. Make the decision that, yes, you want to participate, and you'll put your name on that. And then as you receive invitations, just say yes to somebody. I would strongly urge people, particularly on this first go-round, limit your involvement to no more than 2 OVTs. That's not to say that you have to do 2. That's not the case at all. We'd be thrilled for you to do 1. That's great. I just don't want people to overextend themselves. Always pay your mortgage first. So make sure that you are able to attend to your responsibilities at home before going out to one too many OVT opportunities, because there is a point where you could be trying to do too many. So this first go around, I strongly urge people limit yourself to 2 OVTs. And then, of course, be the OVT chair, and that's a whole different sort of training that will take place beyond the learning opportunities that I'm discussing today. The OVT chairs then, after they find out who's on the team for XYZ system, they will then contact you to talk about next steps. We anticipate that type of contact to be taking place, probably midsummer, because we have the member learning opportunities taking place now. The chair learning opportunities will take place in May, June. So then the teams will be shored up during June and July. So we'll be ready to launch into the next school year. So there you go. This particular topic is kind of a reiteration, but now's the time to get in and get that formalized professional learning done. I said it earlier, I'm going to say it one more time. As I've talked to a variety of educators across the state, I don't care if they're superintendents, curriculum directors, principals, teachers, all people from all sorts of walks of life have expressed to me a concern, thinking, well, I don't know that I could do this. And I assure you, you can do this. You all got through college. You all have a passion for what you're doing. We are making this, we're working to make this as user-friendly as possible. of course, toward that end, as you go through these experiences, if you have feedback for us, we'd love to hear it, because we're always looking to make this even a smoother, better process for everyone involved. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and we'll talk to you again. Thank you very much.